It's Wednesday, May 27th, and this is now on HNN.
We now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today.
Scrubbed. Breaking news. Bad weather postpones the first launch of NASA astronauts from Florida in 9 years.
Annalise Preston in New York with the new CDC guidelines for those infected with COVID-19 and the warning officials are sharing about antibody tests.
Here at home, Young Brothers says without assistance from the state, there could be some service disruptions.
People of this place took it to heart and did everything they were asked of and more.
And we've got details on the timeline for reopening salons, museums, gyms, and other businesses on Oahu.
Oh my God, what else can we ask for?
These stories plus a massive catch was put to good use feeding medical workers. Coming up on This Is Now.
Good afternoon, you're watching This Is Now. The time is now 12:32, and we have some breaking news here in the Digital Center. The U.S. death toll from the coronavirus has now topped 100,000. And we've also got some new numbers from the Department of Health, a small increase.
That's right. Health officials are reporting just one new COVID-19 case today. We're told it's on the Big Island and that the patient recently traveled. The statewide total is now at 644 cases. Hawaii's death toll stands at 17, and so far more than 90% of patients have been released from isolation. Now to some alarming news. Authorities say criminals are using stolen identities to cash in on the massive wave of unemployment claims in the U.S., and scams have been detected in 9 states so far, including Hawaii. In Washington state, the first state targeted, officials say hundreds of millions of dollars in fake claims were paid out. They say most of the activity is connected to a West African fraud ring. Officials say the thieves use identities of people who have not lost their jobs, so they aren't likely to immediately notice someone else is filing in their name. They say they then have the money sent to a prepaid debit card tied to the bank accounts, and that money can then be transferred internationally or exchanged for gift cards. Now, state and federal authorities say they've tried to get back as much of the money as possible while blocking hundreds of millions more from being paid out.
Meanwhile, the Mayor Caldwell is asking the governor to open up a lot more businesses. He's hoping for Friday, but he's still waiting for the governor's approval.
Because of the few cases and abundant healthcare resources, Mayor Caldwell says he's comfortable moving ahead with reopening Oahu's economy.
Our numbers are what they are because the people of this place took it to heart and did everything they were asked of and more. And we are where we are because of that. When we get the governor's approval, we will be releasing those modifications, and I think people will see that it's going to be done in a safe way that's going to protect our health.
The mayor's proposed timeline would allow personal services like hair and nail salons, barber shops, and tattoo parlors to welcome back customers this Friday with restrictions, along with outdoor operations like dog parks and Kualoa Ranch. Outdoor gatherings of groups of 10 people or less, regardless if they're from the same household, would also be allowed. On Friday, June 5th, Caldwell is asking for offices and non-commercial type settings like churches to reopen with safety modifications, and indoor gatherings of 10 people or less would be okay. Then on Friday, June 19th, the mayor is eyeing indoor operations such as gyms, theaters, and museums.
We have yet to receive the proposal, so as soon as we receive it, we'll be able to review it.
And as more people go back to work across Hawaii, state officials are trying to get childcare facilities back on their feet. The head of the State Department of Human Services announced new guidelines for childcare providers, such as cleaning and sanitation measures, staggered meal times, temperature checks, and limiting childcare groups to 1 teacher for every 9 children.
I am absolutely aware that this is not going to be sufficient. As our economy continues to reopen in an incremental fashion, we would need more slots for childcare. We will adapt and will make sure that we are providing the guidance and support to our providers as the need continues to grow.
DHS says it will use close to $12 million in federal grant money to help childcare providers meet the new guidelines. Officials say providers can apply for funding with the department. The deadline is July 31st.
Governor Ige also said he expects to announce the end of the inter-island travel quarantine very soon and that they are finalizing plans to reopen tourism. However, he refused to set any dates for those plans.
The Department of Defense says it will lift its stop movement order it issued this spring in phases rather than on June 30th. Thousands of military members in Hawaii or with orders to be stationed in the state are affected by the policy. Service members were required to stop movement both domestically and internationally. The Defense Department moves more than 400,000 service members, DoD civilians, and their family members each year, most often in the spring.
HPD put out the full list of inmates rearrested after being released amid the pandemic. Of the more than 300 inmates released on Oahu, 50 were taken back into custody, some multiple times. One man, Matthew Chung, was on the list 4 times for different rearrests. Chung was originally serving a deferred sentence for 4th-degree theft and 3rd-degree drug promotion. HPD says, quote, there was no urgency or legitimate reason to release inmates early.
This, as a model often cited by the White House, has lowered the death projections for the country. Elise Preston has more.
Churches, pools, drive-in theaters, and in-person shopping is back in California. But at this mall in Ontario, California, shoppers are finding many stores still shuttered and long lines outside open ones.
I didn't think it was going to be that empty. So, none of the stores were open?
On New York's Long Island, some businesses are now able to offer in-store or curbside pickups.
We're hoping to just salvage the rest of the season.
And Nevada's governor has announced most businesses can reopen Friday, and casinos are on track to open next week. University of Washington researchers now say 11,000 fewer Americans will die by August. That projection is down to about 132,000. Still, 27 states reported increases in new coronavirus cases Tuesday compared to 2 weeks ago.
New CDC guidelines warn COVID-19 antibody tests are wrong nearly half the time and should not be used to determine if someone is immune to the coronavirus.
And a new Associated Press poll with the nonpartisan objective research organization finds half of Americans are skeptical about a COVID-19 vaccine, and only about half say they will get one.
I think there's an opportunity for policymakers and health communicators to convey kind of what's going into building this vaccine, how solid are the data to make sure that it's safe, so that when it's available, we can kind of have pre-addressed some of those concerns.
The Trump administration has a goal of having 300 million doses of a vaccine by January. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
Now, these are some staggering numbers. The state's hotel revenue has dropped nearly 95%, making the average about $12 a room. That's according to the state's tourism authority's monthly report, which listed April's occupancy at just under 9%. The average daily rate fell to $131, down from $300 the same time last year.
Young Brothers is asking the state for $25 million in stimulus funds to overcome a dire financial situation. Lacey Denise has the details.
The only shipping company servicing Molokai and Lanai says it's in a financial crisis and needs help from the state. Young Brothers' business is down 30% and it's losing more than $1 million a month amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Parent company Saltchuk has been covering losses, but starting next month, the checks will stop. In a letter filed with the Public Utility Commission yesterday, Young Brothers is asking the state for $25 million in federal stimulus funds to sustain operations through December. Now, without assistance, the company said the neighbor islands might see some shipping disruptions.
We depend on Young Brothers to bring in almost 90% of all the produce, all of our food, and other necessities that this county and this island, Molokai and Lanai, exist off of.
The company says if it doesn't get help, it'll have to prioritize revenue-gathering lines of service, potentially putting at least some of those islands at risk.
So if you fly American Airlines, listen up to this. They want to make sure you know whether or not you're going to be boarding a full flight. So if you see your flight is starting to fill up, they'll let you know. and they say they'll switch your flight at no charge. In fact, they've decided to extend free change fees from the end of May through the end of June. American hasn't said how full the flights will be before they reach out, or what max capacity is, though they've said they're limiting the number of people on each plane.
A new poll by Civil Beat in partnership with Hawaii News Now shows that the stay-at-home and quarantine orders during the crisis are very popular. We talked about it this morning on Sunrise with Civil Beat reporter Chad Blair.
In terms of the support, it's pretty remarkable how broad it is. It crosses a lot of demographic areas, age, education, what island that you live on, in terms of whether you're male or female, how much education you have, it doesn't matter. Where it does matter is if you're more conservative, more Republican, or more independent, you tend to be against these same policies. If you're a Democrat or if you're liberal, you're more in favor of these stay-at-home and quarantine restrictions. Also, if you make over $100,000, you also are not crazy about the policies that are in place.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has dropped the defamation lawsuit she filed against former Secretary of State and Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. The move ends a short-lived legal battle where Gabbard contended Clinton, quote, lied about Gabbard's ties to Russia during a 2019 interview. It stemmed from Clinton saying that the Hawaii veteran, then a 2020 presidential candidate, was being groomed to run as a third-party candidate and was a favorite of the Russians. The lawsuit, which was filed in January, said Gabbard suffered damages estimated to exceed $50 million. A Clinton spokesperson said, quote, this was a publicity stunt through and through, and this filing makes that clear.
I was excited about this, but breaking news has postponed NASA's first manned space launch in nearly 9 years. Skylar Henry has more from the Kennedy Space Center.
Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken arrived at the launch pad in a Tesla, painted to match their spacesuits. The two veteran astronauts had boarded the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule when bad weather forced a scrub. The next attempt will be Saturday, marking the first time in nearly a decade that NASA astronauts launch from U.S. soil.
This is a unique opportunity to bring all of America together.
Vice President Mike Pence and President Donald Trump traveled to Florida to see the launch. When they do lift off, propelled by the Falcon 9 rocket, Hurley and Behnken will accelerate to 17,000 miles per hour on a rendezvous with the International Space Station. 24 hours after liftoff, they'll be greeted by colleague Chris Cassidy on the ISS. SpaceX is the first private company to send American astronauts into orbit, and CEO Elon Musk feels the weight of that responsibility.
It weighs very heavily. That's really all I can think about right now. I really have to mentally block it, because otherwise it would be emotionally impossible to deal with.
Musk spoke with the astronauts as they suited up for the flight, which NASA says will open the door to America's return to the moon and beyond.
All of this ultimately is for a purpose, and that is to get to Mars.
Hurley flew the final shuttle mission in 2011 and has spent years training on the new technology.
Most of the controls for the crew inside the cockpit are all touchscreens. We do have a few hardware buttons and switches for very, very critical things, but almost everything is controlled by touch and screen. That's even how you fly it.
For nearly a decade, American astronauts have had to hitch rides on Russian rockets. Now that a private company is handling transportation, NASA says it can focus on the science of space exploration. Skylar Henry, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
Bummer, but better safe than sorry. We were really eager for it today.
Crossing our fingers for Saturday.
Yeah, we'll be watching on Saturday for sure. Really cool that it's all touchscreen.
I know.
That's so Tesla of Elon Musk there.
Totally.
Very much. We got some news if you're planning a vacation to Disney.
That's right. Disney World has set its reopening dates after closing the park in mid-March, leaving the Walt Disney Company reeling. We're going to hear from the VP of Disney.
Our plans call for a phased reopening of our theme parks, beginning with the Magic Kingdom and Disney's Animal Kingdom on Saturday, July 11th. Epcot and Disney's Hollywood Studios will open on Wednesday, July 15th. We believe our reopening proposal for our property reflects a very thoughtful, methodical, and phased approach, and we've incorporated all of the reopening protocols throughout our guest experience and our cast experience. We will deploy a series of soft opening tactics for select audiences several days prior to our July 11th, with cast previews and affinity soft opening preview days. This will reflect a thoughtful ramp up in our attendance strategy and allow us to launch, learn, and adjust along the way.
And some of those safety measures that are going to be implemented, workers and guests will be required to wear face coverings and undergo temperature screenings before entering the parks. Disney will reduce capacity at the parks, and the resort will temporarily suspend parades, fireworks, and other events that draw crowds. It will also set up cashless, contactless payment systems and increase the number of available hand sanitizing stations. And SeaWorld revealed its plans to reopen its Orlando theme parks on June 11th. SeaWorld Orlando, Discovery Cove, and Aquatica Orlando will open to workers the day before for an Employee Appreciation Day. New safety measures will be implemented and high contact areas will be cleaned more frequently. There will also be distancing markers in those attraction lines.
You gotta wonder how these social distancing things are gonna play out because, you know, you're a kid and your first instinct is to run up to Mickey and give him a hug and those kind of things. Those are gonna be impulses that are gonna be hard to control really at these theme parks. And they say they're limiting numbers, but by how many? It's all gonna play out in the next few weeks, so we'll just have to wait and see.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we want to end on some good news in these difficult times. 5 fishermen are giving back by doing what they love. Stephanie Lum has those details.
Every fisherman knows there are no guarantees out on the water, but these guys got lucky off Oahu, a 220-pound ahi. What they did next is sure to make mouths water.
Okay, we're gonna finish it with a little bit of avocado.
They were hungry after a day at sea, but the spicy ahi and limu poke bowls weren't for them. The fresh fish went directly to the frontline workers at Straub and the Queens Medical Center. The healthcare workers overcome by their generosity.
Anytime you can get fresh fish prepared for you and given to you, my God, what else can we ask for?
When the community does show appreciation for what sometimes feels like a thankless job, it does make an impact.
The 104-year-old fisherman, Setsuo Todoroki, and he was the one who really inspired us to do this project.
The avid local fisherman was featured on Hawaii Skin Diver TV. He always shared his catch with people in need. Todoroki passed away recently, and executive producer Kyle Nakamoto and his fishing and diving buddies wanted to keep his legacy alive by showing gratitude to frontline workers.
We know our restaurants, Monarch Seafood, our commercial fishermen, they've all been hit by this. So for them to take time out of their day, their troubles to give us something, it's so humbling, and we're so grateful.
Thank you for getting up every morning and doing what you guys do. I know that stuff's scary and dangerous, and you guys have families too, kids and grandparents. It was nice to be a part of something greater than yourself, especially at this time when everybody needs to come together.
Stephanie Lum reporting there. Very cool to see all those people benefiting from that catch.
I love when people say I love you with poke. It's a great way to show your appreciation.
I believe that. You guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now today on this Wednesday. No official press conference in regard to the state or city's response to the coronavirus plan as we know it at this point. If we do get word of any of that or any updates at all, we'll send it to you in an H&N Digital Push Alert. You guys stay with us. We'll have a wrap-up of all the day's news coming up today at 5 on H&N. Stay safe, everyone. Have a good day.